Welcome to the deep dive. Where we really get into those complicated topics. We're going way past don't plagiarize today.
Yeah.
We're diving deep into what plagiarism really is, why it matters so much,
Yeah.
and how to teach it so it actually sinks in.
Mhm.
Our main source is this super interesting research paper from the Journal of Academic Writing. But we've also got some other cool insights from other places.
Mhm.
Oh, and get this, the study we're looking at. They actually let students, potentially plagiarize on purpose.
Well,
It is, might sound a little crazy at first, but
I know, right?
this experiment, it helped researchers figure out why so many students plagiarize without even meaning to. It really comes down to students coming into university with all these different ideas about plagiarism, based on their culture and what they've experienced before.
It's not always some evil plot to cheat.
Exactly. What one culture might think is totally normal, like sharing work to help a friend, could get you in big trouble in another.
Oh, and think about collectivist cultures where helping your classmates is expected, right? Sharing work might feel like the right thing to do. But then in Western schools, which are all about individual work, that could be seen as plagiarism.
Whoa, so you can have a student who's genuinely trying to be helpful and then, boom, they're in trouble for academic dishonesty.
Exactly. It can be really confusing for students, and it shows why just telling them the rules isn't enough. We need to get where they're coming from, understand their backgrounds.
So we got to go deeper than just don't do it. But how do you teach this in a way that actually works? Because let's be real, some of those academic policies are, kind of boring.
Yeah, that's true. The research shows that learning styles play a big part. Some people learn best from clear rules, while others need to try things out, make mistakes, get feedback.
Right.
Think about yourself. What kind of learner are you? Do you like having a set of instructions, or do you learn more by, actually doing stuff?
Oh, I'm definitely a learn by doing person. Give me a project, let me mess around with it, and I'll figure it out. Rules are good, but experience is the best teacher for me.
And that's totally fine. The hard part for teachers is figuring out how to reach all those different learners. And that's where this study we're talking about gets really cool. They basically said, okay, students, you can potentially plagiarize in this controlled setting.
Hold on, basically say, go ahead, plagiarize, and let's see what happens.
Not exactly like that. It was a carefully planned experiment. The assignment wasn't for a grade. It was just for learning.
Okay, so like a safety net where students could try things without getting a big penalty.
Exactly, a calculated risk to bring out those misunderstandings and turn it into a real learning experience.
I'm starting to see the logic here. So they gave this assignment with the bare minimum instructions about plagiarism. What happened next? Did students just hand it in and hope for the best?
Not quite. This is where it gets really innovative. Instead of just grading each paper individually, they used all sorts of methods to make it a group learning thing. They gave individual comments, sure, but they also shared examples of good work anonymously with the whole class.
Ooh, so students can see what good actually looked like, not just be told what not to do.
Exactly. And it gets even better. During some sessions, students could volunteer to have their work discussed live with everyone.
Oh, wow. That would be nerve-wracking. But I bet it would be a powerful way to learn. Real-time feedback, seeing how it all works in practice.
That's it. It's social constructivism we learn best from interacting with and getting feedback from each other.
Right.
Remember how we talked about different learning styles? This tapped into all those styles, making it a dynamic experience.
It's like turning plagiarism prevention into a group project. Makes sense? Learning with your classmates, getting that instant feedback, it's going to stick better than just reading some boring rules.
You got it. It's about creating a space where mistakes are seen as learning opportunities, not something to be punished for.
All right, so they created this safe space to maybe plagiarize, then gave feedback through all these interactive ways. But did it actually work?
This is where it gets really interesting. The results were pretty amazing. The number of students who needed help with plagiarism on their next assignment, it went way down. But it gets even better. The study showed that students actually started to understand plagiarism differently. They weren't just following the rules, they were getting why those rules matter.
That's what it's all about. Understanding, not just memorizing.
Yeah.
I bet there were some great quotes from the students, their thoughts on the whole experience.
Yeah.
I love a good student testimonial.
Oh, there are. One student who had trouble with referencing at first said, after having some interactive lectures on this, I finally got it.
That's what we like to hear, giving students those light bulb moments, And it sounds like this experiment had a ton of those.
Exactly. It's about encouraging students to think for themselves about why academic honesty is so important. Hopefully that makes them more likely to do the right thing in the long run.
So it's not about being scared of getting in trouble. It's about respecting knowledge and the work that other people have done.
Exactly. And that brings us to another part of this whole conversation. We've talked about how culture and learning styles play a part, but there's another piece that often gets missed.
Ooh, tell me more.
It's about recognizing that academic writing is more than just following the rules. It's about being part of a bigger conversation, like a dialogue with all the scholars and researchers who came before us.
So when we cite our sources correctly, we're not just avoiding plagiarism, we're showing respect for those who came before us and adding to this ongoing conversation.
Exactly. It's like a relay race. Each scholar takes the baton, builds on what's already been done, and passes it to the next generation. And citations are like these little notes we pass along saying, hey, I got this idea from this person. Give them credit too.
I love that analogy. It shows how plagiarism breaks that chain of knowledge,
Wow.
disrupts the flow of ideas.
Exactly. When you plagiarize, you're basically cutting out everyone who contributed to that idea before you. It's like taking credit for someone else's lap in the relay race.
And that just messes up the whole system of academic work.
It does. It's all about recognizing that knowledge is built together over time. And when we plagiarize, we're being disrespectful to that whole process.
This is making me think back to that experiment, letting students potentially plagiarize in that safe setting. The researchers weren't just teaching them the rules. They were helping them understand the bigger picture, like how plagiarism affects the whole academic community and the integrity of knowledge itself.
You're totally right. They were setting the stage for those aha moments where students could see the link between plagiarism and the values that make academic work so important.
Okay, so we've talked about cultural differences, learning styles, and why plagiarism matters. But how do we put this into practice? What can educators do to teach this effectively?
Well, one thing is to stop thinking of plagiarism as just a rule to be broken. Instead, think of it as a chance to learn.
So instead of saying, don't do it, we could say,
Let's talk about why citing our sources is so important. It's not just about avoiding trouble, it's about building trust and showing that you're a credible member of the academic community.
right. Because when we cite our sources, we're showing that we respect the hard work of other people. We're recognizing where ideas come from and adding to that big scholarly conversation we talked about earlier.
Exactly. It's about shifting from individual success to building knowledge together.
Makes sense. And it goes back to that social constructivism idea. Students learn better when they're actively involved, not just listening to someone talk.
You got it. That's why interactive feedback is so important. It gives students a place to try things out, mess up, and learn from their mistakes without being afraid.
So instead of just marking up a paper and giving a bad grade.
You can use those times to actually teach, to talk about plagiarism, understand where the student is coming from, and help them think critically.
And maybe even have those moments where they finally get why plagiarism matters. Not because it's a rule, but because it goes against everything that makes academic work honest and valuable.
Exactly. It's about building a culture of respect, not just for other people's work, but for knowledge itself.
This has been so insightful. I feel like I understand plagiarism in a totally new way. It's not just about not getting in trouble. It's about doing what's right for the sake of knowledge and scholarship.
I'm glad to hear that. And I hope our listeners feel the same way, inspired to think about plagiarism differently.
As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this. If you had to create a plagiarism policy for your own class or school, what would it look like? How would you balance clear rules with the need for a real understanding? How would you create a space where students are accountable but also feel safe to think critically?
That's a great question. And the answer might be different for everyone, depending on their situation and what they're trying to achieve.
But I think we can all agree that going beyond don't do it is a good place to start.
Absolutely. We need to see that plagiarism is a complex issue and that stopping it means taking a multifaceted approach.
It's about meeting students where they are, understanding their different perspectives, and giving them the tools and support they need to be ethical and engaged scholars.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey into the world of plagiarism.
So what would that look like, in real life? What are some things educators can do, like baby steps, to try this new way of teaching about plagiarism?
Well, one simple thing, but really powerful, is to start thinking of plagiarism as a chance to learn, not just a rule you break.
Instead of just don't do it? we could say.
Hey, let's explore why citing sources is so important. It's not about avoiding getting in trouble. It's about being trustworthy in the academic world.
Right, because when we cite correctly, it shows we respect the work others have done. We're showing where ideas come from and contributing to that big conversation we talked about.
Exactly. It's like shifting the focus from me to us, from individual success to building knowledge together.
That makes a lot of sense. It goes back to that idea of social constructivism we keep talking about. Students learn better when they're actually doing something, not just sitting there listening.
Precisely. And that's why those interactive feedback methods are so powerful. It gives students a safe space to try things, make mistakes, learn from them without being afraid.
So instead of just marking up a paper, giving it back with a bad grade.
We can use that as a chance to teach, have a conversation, understand the student's viewpoint, help them think critically.
And maybe that's when those aha moments happen, when they finally get why plagiarism is a big deal. Not because it's a rule, but because it hurts the whole idea of academic integrity.
Exactly. Building a culture of respect for other people's work and for knowledge itself.
This has been eye-opening. I feel like I see plagiarism totally differently now. It's not just about staying out of trouble. It's about upholding what makes scholarship meaningful and trustworthy.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I hope our listeners feel inspired, too, to rethink how they approach plagiarism.
So to wrap up our deep dive today, one final thought for you all. Imagine you're designing a plagiarism policy for your class, your school, whatever. What would it look like? How do you balance having clear rules with that need for deep understanding? How do you make a place where students are accountable but also feel safe to think critically?
That's a great question to think about. And honestly, the answer will be different for everyone, right? Depends on your situation, your goals.
But we can all agree that moving past just saying don't do it is crucial.
Absolutely. We have to see that plagiarism is complex. It has cultural aspects, teaching aspects, and stopping it takes a multi-pronged approach.
It's about meeting students where they are, understanding their different views, and giving them the tools and support to be ethical, engaged scholars.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating exploration of plagiarism.
And until next time, keep seeking knowledge, keep asking questions, keep diving deep.